Truck 14. I broke a rule on a Tuesday night in November, and I'm writing this so you understand that the rules exist for reasons. The rules I am talking about are not the rules the company gives you. Those are mostly about hours of service and weight distribution, and whether you're up to date on your medical. The rules I am talking about are the rules drivers tell each other. The ones you learn from the older guys at truck stops, in the diners at 3 in the morning, when you've been on the road long enough to be invited into the conversation. They are not written down anywhere, but every long-haul driver I have ever respected has known them. The first rule is this: you do not pick up hitchhikers. It does not matter if it's daylight. It does not matter if the person looks safe. It does not matter if it's snowing and there is no other shelter for 40 miles. You do not pick them up. There are practical reasons for this: insurance, liability. The company will fire you on the spot. And there are reasons that are not practical. And the older guys will tell you both kinds. And they will tell you the second kind quietly, in a voice that says they are not entirely joking, even though they are pretending to be. I have driven long haul for 12 years. I drive a regular route between Tacoma and Boise, 520 miles, mostly Interstate 84, with a stop in Pendleton for fuel and food. I have made that run 4 times a week for almost the entire 12 years. I know every mile marker. I know every truck stop. I know which cops work, which jurisdictions, and what their patience levels are. I have, in 12 years, never once picked up a hitchhiker. Until last Tuesday. He said his name was Daniel. He was sitting on the curb outside the Flying J in Pendleton at 2:14 in the morning. No backpack, no jacket, no luggage, just a thin gray hoodie pulled up over his head and his hands tucked into his sleeves against the cold. I noticed him when I came out of the diner. I noticed him because he was looking at me. Not at my truck. At me. He had been waiting, the way a person waits when they have been told someone is coming, and they are not sure what that someone will look like. I should have walked past him. I want to make this clear. Every part of my training and every year of my experience told me to walk past him. I had eaten my chicken fried steak. I had topped off my thermos. I had done my pre-trip walk-around on the rig, and I was ready to roll. The next leg was 4 hours to the Boise yard. I was tired, but not exhausted. I had no reason to stop and talk to anyone. But he was looking at me, and he stood up when I came out of the diner. And he walked toward me, slowly, with his hands still in his sleeves, and he said, in a voice that was very polite and very calm, "Excuse me, sir. I'm trying to get to Boise. Could you possibly give me a ride?" I should have said no. I am writing this from a place where I have had time to think about it, and I want you to know that I understand now what I should have done. I should have said no. I should have walked to my truck. I should have closed the door behind me and rolled out of that lot and never looked back. Instead, I looked at him. I looked at his face under the hood. He was maybe 30. He had brown eyes. He had a small, friendly smile. He looked tired and cold and harmless, and there was something in his face. I have thought about this a great deal. There was something in his face that asked for kindness, not begged. Asked. The way a polite child asks for something they know they aren't supposed to want. And I said yes. I said, "Get in. Boise is 4 hours. You'll have to keep me company. I don't allow sleeping in my cab." He smiled. He said, "Thank you so much, sir. I'll be very good company, I promise." And he climbed up into the passenger seat of my truck, and he closed the door behind him, and I pulled out onto I-84 East, and that is where my life ended, even though I am still alive. I noticed the first thing about 30 miles out of Pendleton. We had been making conversation. Easy conversation. Nothing strange. The kind of small talk you make with someone in a confined space when you don't know each other. He told me he was visiting family in Boise. He told me his car had broken down outside Walla Walla, and a friend was supposed to pick him up, but had flaked. He told me he didn't have a phone because he had dropped it in a sink earlier that day. All of it was plausible. All of it was the kind of small misfortune that explains why a person would be sitting on a curb at 2 in the morning with no luggage. But about 30 miles out, in the middle of telling me about his sister's kids, I glanced over at him. He was looking at me, and I realized, with a small cold drop in my stomach, that he had not blinked. I want to be clear about what I mean. I don't mean he hadn't blinked since I'd looked at him. I mean he had not blinked since he'd gotten in the truck. I had been driving for 30 minutes. I had glanced over at him probably a dozen times, the way you do when you're talking to a passenger. He had looked back at me every time, with the same friendly, tired expression. And in 30 minutes, his eyes had not closed. I told myself I was wrong. I told myself I had simply not noticed him blinking, because it was dark and I was tired, and people blink very fast, and I had been watching the road. I told myself a lot of things in the next 10 miles. None of them were true. I knew. None of them were true. But I told myself anyway, because the alternative was that I was alone in my cab in the middle of the Oregon high desert at 3 in the morning with something that was not a person. Around mile marker 240, I tested it. I asked him a question. I don't remember what it was, something about his work, something that required him to think. And I watched him while he answered. His mouth moved. His face arranged itself in an expression of mild concentration. His eyes did not blink. He was watching me watch him. I am sure of this. He knew exactly what I was checking. And after he finished his answer, he turned his face slightly toward the windshield, and he closed his eyes, very deliberately, for almost a full second, and then he opened them again. He had blinked on demand, the way you wave at a child who is staring at you in a restaurant. There. Was that what you needed? I did not say anything. I drove. The rig was doing 72 in a 70, and I made myself bring it down to the limit because I did not want to be pulled over with him in the seat next to me. I do not know why this seemed important. I only knew that I did not want a state trooper to walk up to my window and shine a flashlight into my cab, and I did not want to have to explain who Daniel was, and I did not want to find out what Daniel would do when a person in a uniform asked him for identification. I kept driving. He kept talking. He had stopped pretending the small talk was real. He was no longer telling me about his sister, no longer telling me about Walla Walla. He was just speaking. Words that flowed into other words, calm and pleasant and almost meaningless, the way a radio plays in the background when you're not listening. I do not remember any of what he said for the next 20 miles. I think, looking back, that I was not supposed to. Around mile marker 200, I checked the rearview mirror. It was a habit. You check your mirrors every few seconds when you're driving an 18-wheeler. You don't think about it. The rig has 3 mirrors on the passenger side and 3 on the driver's side, and you scan all of them on rotation, the way you breathe, automatic, unconscious, every few seconds for 12 years. I checked the rear view, the small one mounted to the windshield that lets you see into the cab behind you. It is angled to show the sleeper berth and, by extension, the passenger seat. The passenger seat in the mirror was empty. I want you to understand that Daniel was sitting next to me. I could see him in my peripheral vision. I could hear him breathing, and his breathing, I noted, was the only thing about him that was wrong in a consistent way. It did not match a human pattern. It was too even, like a metronome that had been set carelessly. I could feel the small shift of weight in the cab when he moved. He was there. He was occupying space. He was, by every test except one, a person sitting in the passenger seat of my truck. But the mirror did not see him. I checked the side mirror, the one on the passenger side that shows the length of the cab. Nothing. Just the empty seat and the dashboard and the door panel. I checked the small mirror on the visor. Nothing. I checked, finally, the chrome trim around my CB radio, which throws a faint reflection if the angle is right. I could see myself in the chrome. I could see the steering wheel. I could see the seat next to me. The seat was empty. Daniel was still talking. His voice was right beside me. His head, in my peripheral vision, was angled toward the windshield, watching the road ahead. He was telling me, calmly, about a place he had lived for a long time. He was telling me that the place was tired of him. He was telling me that he was going somewhere else now, somewhere new, and that I had been very kind to give him a ride. I did not respond. I do not think he expected me to. I drove. I want to walk you through what I was thinking, because I think it matters. I was thinking about my options. I was thinking about them very methodically, because the panic that should have been happening was not happening. Or rather, it was happening. But it was happening in a part of my brain that was sealed off from the part that was driving the truck. And the driving part was very calm and very slow, and was working through the problem the way it would work through any problem on the road. Option 1 was to stop the truck. I could pull onto the shoulder, get out, and run. The problem with this was that I was on Interstate 84, in the high desert at 3 in the morning. There were no exits for 30 miles in either direction, and I did not know what Daniel would do if I stopped the truck. He had been very polite. He had asked for a ride. He had not made any threatening movement. But I had also looked into a mirror and found him not there. And a thing that does not appear in mirrors is not a thing whose reaction to being abandoned at a roadside I wanted to test. Option 2 was to keep driving and deliver him to Boise. This was, in some sense, what he had asked for. He had asked for a ride to Boise. If I gave him a ride to Boise, perhaps he would get out and thank me and disappear into the night, and that would be the end of it. The problem with this was that I didn't know what he would do when we got to Boise. I did not know what he was going to Boise for. I did not know if Boise was the destination or the staging area. Option 3 was to talk to him, to acknowledge what I had seen, to ask him directly what he was. The problem with this was that I had read enough books and seen enough movies and listened to enough older drivers tell enough stories to know that when you are alone in a confined space with something that is not what it appears to be, the absolute worst thing you can do is let it know that you know. Whatever fragile contract was holding him in his seat, whatever pretense of being a polite hitchhiker named Daniel who needed a ride to Boise, was the only thing keeping the situation manageable. If I broke the pretense, I did not know what came next. But I knew it would not be better. I kept driving. I kept my eyes on the road. I did not look at the mirrors again. I made small noises of agreement when Daniel spoke. I did not respond directly. I did not ask any questions. Around mile marker 150, somewhere between LeGrand and Baker City, Daniel went quiet. The silence was somehow worse than the talking. I could still hear his breathing, that even metronome, but he had stopped speaking. The cab felt full in a way I cannot describe, like the air had thickened, like I was driving through deep water. The rig was doing the speed limit. The road was empty. The headlights were carving 2 cones of pale light into the dark. After maybe 5 minutes of silence, Daniel said, "You've figured something out?" I did not answer. He said, "It's all right. Most people do, eventually. It usually takes longer than this. You're observant. I respect that." I did not answer. He said, "I'm not going to hurt you. I want to make that very clear. I have never hurt anyone who gave me a ride. It would be impolite, and it would also be against the rules I work within. I don't know if you know this, but my kind have rules too. They are different from your rules. But they are rules. I did not answer. I was driving. I was very, very calm. I was holding the wheel at 10 and 2, and I was watching the white lines come at me out of the dark, and I wasn't looking at the passenger seat. Daniel said, "I'm going to ask you one favor. It's a small favor. I'm not going to make you do it. It really is a favor. If you say no, I will get out at Boise like I said I would, and you will never see me again, and your life will go back to the way it was." I did not answer. He said, "But if you say yes, you will have done a kindness, and kindness is, well, it's noticed, where I'm from, and the things that are noticed are repaid. I am not promising you anything specific. I am just telling you that I notice." I drove. I did not answer. He said, "The favor is this. When we get to Boise, I would like you to drop me off at a specific address. It's not the address I gave you. The address I gave you was a story. The real address is a small house on the east side of town. There is a man living there. He is asleep right now. He has been asleep for a long time, in a way that is not entirely natural. I'm going to wake him up. He has been waiting to be woken up for almost 40 years. He will be very glad to see me." I did not answer. He said, "I am telling you this because you deserve to know. I am not asking you to participate. I am asking you to drop me at the curb. I will get out of your truck, and I will walk up to the door, and I will let myself in, and you will drive away. You will never know what happens after. I think it will be a kindness for the man and for the people who love him, who have spent 40 years not understanding why he won't wake up. I think they will be very grateful, even if they don't know to whom." He paused. "Or," he said, "I am lying to you, and the man inside is going to be the second person I hurt tonight, and you will be the first." He said this gently, the way a person tells a child that fire is hot. He said, "I am not going to tell you which it is. That is the favor. To drop me off without knowing. To choose to be kind to a stranger when the stranger has told you, plainly, that the stranger might be a monster. Most people cannot do this. Most people, when given the choice, choose to know. That is why I rarely ride this far with anyone. I usually have to find a different way." He was quiet for a moment. He said, "I think you can do it. I think you have the temperament for it. That is why I picked you at the truck stop. I have been at that Flying J for 3 nights waiting for someone with the right temperament. I am very glad you came in." I drove. I drove for a long time. The miles ticked off. We passed Baker City. We crossed the Snake River. We came into Idaho. The sky was starting to gray in the east when I crested the last ridge above Boise, and the city lay spread below us, lights twinkling in the basin, the freeway curling down toward downtown. Daniel was silent. He had been silent for almost 2 hours. He was looking at the windshield with that small, polite smile, and his eyes were not blinking, and I was not looking at him. I exited at Vista Avenue. I followed his quiet directions, left here, right at the second light, 3 blocks down. I do not remember the streets. I do not want to remember them. We came to a small house on a quiet residential street. The porch light was on. The yard was tidy. There was a child's bicycle leaning against the side of the house. Daniel said, "Here, thank you very much." He opened the door. He stepped down out of the cab. He paused on the curb and he turned, and he looked up at me through the open door. He said, "You did a kindness tonight. I want you to know that. I don't know if you made the right choice. Neither of us will for a while. But I want you to know that I noticed." He closed the door, very gently. He walked up the path to the small house. He walked past the child's bicycle. He climbed the porch steps. He paused at the front door. He turned the knob. The door opened. He stepped inside. The door closed behind him. I sat in my truck. The engine was idling. The street was quiet. The sky was getting lighter. After a long time, I put the rig in gear, and I drove away. That was 4 months ago. I did not finish my run that day. I called dispatch from a payphone outside a gas station in Nampa, and I told them I was sick. I drove the rig to the Boise yard, and I parked it, and I caught a Greyhound back to Tacoma, and I quit 2 days later. I have not driven a truck since. I do not think I ever will. I did not go back to that house. I did not look it up in the news. I have not searched the address, or the neighborhood, or anything that would tell me whether there was a child who lived there, or a wife, or a man who had been asleep for 40 years and is now awake, or any other piece of information that would let me know which of the 2 stories Daniel told me was true. I do not want to know. That is the favor. To not know. I think about it every day. Every single day. I think about the porch light, and the bicycle, and the gentle way Daniel turned the knob, and the small click of the door closing behind him. I think about the kindness, and the cruelty, and the impossibility of telling them apart. And sometimes, late at night, when I cannot sleep, I take out a road atlas, and I look at the long line of Interstate 84 cutting east through the high desert, and I think about how many trucks are on it right now, at this moment, rolling through the dark. I think about the truck stops. I think about the curbs. I think about the people sitting on them, waiting. And I find that I am hoping, very quietly, that the next driver who pulls in is the right kind of person. The kind of person who can do the favor. The kind of person who can be kind to a stranger, even when the stranger has told them, plainly, what the stranger might be. I do not know if I was that person. I am still trying to decide.
This has been a story from the other side of now. If you enjoyed this story, like, comment, and subscribe.